All right, welcome to the Breakthrough Podcast with Chris Medellin, and I am here with a very, very special guest. Now, before I introduce our guest, for those of you that are listening, this is one of those guests that I break rules for because once we got out of the pandemic, I no longer wanted to do Zoom type podcast, but she is just so inspiring, so legit. I am so lucky to be here with the number one Latina on social media. She is the most followed realtor in Rhode Island. She is just crushing it as an influencer, as a content creator. She's a realtor with the agency. She's a team lead for the novelty team. I mean, I can go on, but what's most remarkable about my next guest is that she is Latina, she has seen adversity, and she is inspiring Latinas with her story. And I am just so proud to be here with Katherin Cabrera. Please welcome her. She is also known as Katherin.realestate on Instagram. So please immediately follow her. Thank you, Katherin, for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Chris. What an introduction. I'm like blushing over here. Thank you.
Oh,
So
you
beautiful.
are you are so cool. And for those of you who don't know, so I'll tell you guys a story on how we met. So, and Katherin, I gotta be completely honest, and then we're just gonna chop it up, right?
I love transparency. So please.
So we go. I get, I had to finagle the NAREB group to get me on a panel, and I want every time I get on a panel, I just meet some amazing people. And there was a national NAREB conference in DC. I finagled my way. And when I looked at the lineup, I saw you and I immediately Instagrammed you and I was like, this chick's like amazing. Like she has so many followers. And I was a little nervous to go on stage with you because I'm like, like she's just crushing it in a way that I'm not. And, so I didn't know what to expect, right? I didn't, you're very well polished, you're very well put together. And I'm like immediately intimidated by you. And so we get on stage or we get to the room and you were just as nice as can be. But then you started telling little bits about your story. And we met on the side later. And I was like, I really want to get you on my podcast because there's a story that needs to be told. There's Latinas all over the country that are going through what you've been through and need that inspiration to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's
Right.
you. And
Yeah.
so I just want to thank you for being open to doing the podcast. We're on a Friday right before a 3-day weekend and it's 5:00 where you're at. So I appreciate you taking the time with us to do this. And it means a lot. And I can't wait to jump into your story.
Oh no, I appreciate you. Honestly, I'm super excited. I think that it was the same for me when NAREP reached out for the conference, going to a different state and meeting new people. And let's be honest, people in our industry are not always the nicest, you know,
Okay. Yeah.
where it's very cutthroat to say the
Yes.
least. I love that I was part of that specific, um, you know, conference with you guys, especially you, Chris. I think that we clicked right away. We really had like a moment afterwards where we even like had like our own inside joke where you
Yes.
texted me and I was like, I love that.
That's so funny.
It's one thing to be good at what you do, but I think it's also very important to be somewhat humble.
Yes.
Because I think we're all trying to make it, and we all have like our own little things that we're good at, right? And I think that's the one thing that I would say about me. It's like what you see in social media is what you get. I'm very personable,
Mhm. Well,
Everyone's
that's
open
that's what I love
to
about your content because in the real estate market and in the mortgage market, what I notice is that everybody's doing the same type of content. It's very talking head. I catch myself doing it as well. It's very much, a regurgitation of what somebody else has done. It may, in some variation, but your content is not just entertaining. It's funny. You put your personality into it, but I'm going to jump into this in a second, but something I was so right we were going to do this a couple of hours ago, and I think you and I got our lines crossed. And so I was sitting in here, and I knew a little bit about your story. I knew like maybe, a tiny bit. So I was looking at your Instagram, seeing what I could learn about you. And I saw this video that had like 3 million hits.
Yeah.
And I clicked on it and I was floored. It almost brought me to tears to watch this video
Yeah.
because there is no one that I know within my circles that is putting out their life in a way that you are. And I feel like it's just something that, I hope we can get to today, but you are an inspiration to see how far you come. So a lot of people could judge you,
Yeah.
but until you walked in those designer expensive heels that you are wearing today, there was a long road to get there, and I'm proud of you. And so,
Yeah.
I built this podcast, Catherine, because I wanted to inspire people. And the reason it's called Breakthrough is because right before a breakthrough happens, there's a moment. And that moment is where you're fed up and something happens mentally where you decide enough is enough.
Yeah.
And you have to break out in a way. And in order to break out, there has to be a breakdown. And so I want to jump in immediately into this because you have a heavy story, but tell us about your breakthrough moment, the moment just before you were ready to just change your life, because I think there's people out there that need to hear this.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so I think that post that you're speaking of, the one that has 3 million views, I had to be super vulnerable, right? I had to shed not a nice light on me. It wasn't my most glamorous looks. And like you said, I am, well polished. I do like to take care of myself, look nice. So that was kind of hard because, it's like the ugly truth. But it was important for me because in 2020, while we were all locked away during COVID, uh, I guess you would say I had that breakthrough moment where I was just like, whew, all right, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So my story is about domestic violence, and my soon to be ex-husband, it was dangerous. It was scary. It was crippling, especially in my industry. And so in 2020, I did a lot of like soul searching and I did a lot of self development. I was stuck at home, just like everyone else, looking for that financial freedom. But it was like that fear that if I leave, am I going to be able to make it? Also my safety. But I had to just take that leap of faith. And I think that when the world closed down on everyone, it really, I don't know, it gave me some sort of superpower. And before that, I was on social media, but I wasn't putting myself out there like that much. And so in 2020, it was all about like just feeding my mind, my body, my soul. And like I said, just taking that leap of faith and like walking away. And once I did that in 2021, I decided to speak about my truth because people meet me. And a lot of times when people meet me, they just think that because of social media, everything's so perfect. So I was getting so tired of that,
I
just
thought that.
like, yeah, it's so easy for you. Things just come at you, these opportunities just come to you. And I'm like, no, I've actually worked really hard. Coming here at 10 years old from Honduras, actually illegally, that was another, I don't want to say struggle, but another barrier that I had to break
Yeah,
through.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, 2021, I decided, you know what? I don't care. I've never really cared what people, say or thought. I'm big into like breaking the rules. And I feel like you just gotta be yourself. So I had a crazy epiphany and I told my friend, I said, you know what? I've been wanting to do this, but I'm scared of what people are gonna think. And I actually had mentioned it to one of my friends who owns a restaurant. And I said, listen, I'm thinking about putting together a networking event for domestic violence. And at this point, no one really knew what I was going through. I hadn't really spoken about. And he said, no, not in your industry. It's full of men. No one's going to go. No one's going to support it. It's a very taboo subject. Don't do it. And I was just like, No, I'm gonna do it. Just because you said that, now I want to do it. I think it's the
I
Latina
love
in
that.
me
No,
that
I
I'm
love
just
that.
like, I
Yes.
want to go against it. So I talked to my friend Mike, who does inspections, and I said, let's partner up. This is my idea. Let's do it together. But just so you know, the cause behind it has to be domestic violence. And he didn't ask me why. He didn't really say. He was just like, okay, let's do it. Let's do domestic violence. No one's done that before. And I think right before the event, our event was in November. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is October. And I think I was in bed, and I'm a Scorpio, so I'm super emotional. I was sitting in bed, I was going through it, and I said, fuck it. I'm just going to post it. And I'm sorry, I'm cursing.
No, it's good. Go.
I said,
You
I'm
you're
just
you're
gonna
you're
post
you're
it.
good. Yeah.
And I posted the story and I posted the pictures, and I couldn't tell you the amount of support I received from everyone was so overwhelming. And not only that, but the stories from our colleagues, other realtors, or the lenders, even men. I think the one that really touched my heart was during our event. It was a young man. He just started into real estate. I think he was like 24. And he grabbed me and he said, Kat, I just want to tell you your story. It really touched me. And he said, my mom really, she was a single mom. She went through that. I seen it, and I
Gotcha.
wish people would speak about it, he said. And that really helped me. And that touched my heart because I have an 8-year-old son. And that was the main reason why I wanted to break out of that situation.
My goodness. So I don't think people understand what we're talking about because unless you've seen the video, you really don't have a context to what you're talking about. But let me kind of, try to frame it up here as best as I can. Um, so right before the podcast, I was looking at my Instagram and I hit this one and immediately you put something on there like trigger warning. And so I was like, all right, I'm in, because the first picture is a really beautiful picture of you and your son. And then it goes into these pictures of almost like a different person.
Yeah.
It's not who I know.
No.
And it infuriated me
Yeah.
because I see this amazingly strong woman who is at the most vulnerable point in her life in picture after picture after picture, and you're black and blue.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand how much courage it probably took to put your life out there, in an industry that is very much a image based industry. And
Yes.
so, you know, it all came together because I knew there was a reason we were going to do this. And I did not know that this is the turn it was going to take hours ago. I just knew you had this thing, it was, you have that thing. And so to know that you, in the last 2 years, you went through this entire transformation to put your life and everything that you knew at stake to make a statement, and to see the outpouring of support that you've gotten has been remarkable. So let me go back a little bit. Do you mind if I ask questions like
No,
about
not
this?
at all, please.
This is
Yeah.
like, I want the audience to have, even more context to this. And I'm very curious about it. So you said you posted that in 2020.
So the video that you're speaking about, that was last year, but I did start talking about my story in 2021.
When
So
did those pictures happen? When did the event happen that was it within those
so
pictures?
those pictures are 2018, 2017, 2019.
Wow. So okay, so that's like yesterday in my opinion, right? That
Yeah.
that like I feel like I could touch those years. And so you went through all that. And your son's at an age where he's going to remember things, and he had to see his mother like this. And then at what point did you say to yourself, one, I'm getting out of this, and then two, I'm telling the world about this? Like, what was the timing between those two moments?
So 2020 was when I had the realization that I couldn't stay in this relationship anymore, in that marriage. And I left with nothing, Chris. I took clothes, my son's clothes. I think that's it. It was
So
snowing
you
one
both
night.
left? You
We
both
both,
left?
yeah,
Okay, good.
me and my son. Nobody knew. It was just like a decision that I just had to make. Like I said, it was like an epiphany, that breakthrough that just put, I don't know, I just felt like if I didn't do it then while the world was shut down, I was never going to do it. And I left everything behind. I left my house, I left everything, and I had to start from zero. But
So
I
did you go
knew,
get like a hotel, an apartment? Did you have a friend, a family?
no,
Like,
I
where did
went
you
to
go?
my mom's house. I went to my
Okay.
mom's house, and that was very humbling,
Yeah.
extremely humbling. But I knew that I had to do it, especially because I really wanted to take my real estate career to the next level. And being in that relationship, I was either going to lose my life trying to pursue this dream of real estate, or I was just never going to do it, because it was so toxic. There was so much jealousy, and it was almost like being captive, you know? And, in that industry, you have to be able to have, communications with other people and
All
stuff
day.
like
Yeah.
all day. So I just said, if I don't do it, I'm either gonna die in the situation. I'm never gonna be able. And I knew I had a bigger purpose. I know, and I'm not saying that it's okay, but I knew that I had a story to tell.
Mhm.
So 2021, when I decided to start Let's Get Social, which is the event where we spread awareness about domestic violence, that's when I decided to come out, because for the longest time, Chris, I felt like I was meeting these people, but no one knew who Kat was. Yeah,
There's no way to allow anybody to know who you are
it
because
was like wearing a mask,
yes, you're almost
you
like living
know?
a double life. It's like living a double life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A double life. So it's like nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows what I'm going through. So it was actually very therapeutic when I did that. It was almost like a release. It was almost like I could really, really be myself, be vulnerable, and just open and transparent.
What if you can go back to Catherine, when you were 18 years old, do you if you went back to that person who was 18 years old, does that little girl, and I say little girl because I still think at 18 we're children, um, but do you think that she believed the success you would be in today and that you would be leading the lifestyle that you're leading today?
I think so. I've
Good.
always been very optimistic, and I've always been a dreamer. And sometimes you might even call it delusional, but I think that's my way of manifesting things.
That's
You
it.
know,
I totally
yeah,
agree. Yes.
yeah.
So
So
what
I'm
would you
really
tell her?
connected with that.
What would you tell you at 18 today, knowing all the insecurities that we have at that age and, or
Yeah.
not, I don't know, maybe you were
That's a
just
big one,
always
Chris, actually. That really is a big one because, sometimes when we're stuck in those type of situations,
Mhm.
um, it's almost like we're lacking that self-love, right? Because it's like we know that's not love. We know that's not how you love someone, right? But it's a lot of those insecurities that it's like no one's gonna love me, no one's gonna want me. And it comes from that, also that emotional abuse from that partner, because it's over time. So it's not just the physical abuse, but it's like the emotional abuse. And it almost starts to
100%.
cripple you. You almost have to question yourself. So I would say to myself, like, listen, you didn't let that dim your light. I'm proud of you. And, we have so much more to accomplish, but we're going to do it.
Well, I'm so proud of you for finding the courage and the strength to get through what you had to get through to get here, and this is really what it's about. I mean, this is about breakthroughs. So, there's somebody who's listening who is probably going through this today. And, to think that you not only had the courage to get out of the relationship that was abusive, both physical and emotionally, you posted it. And I feel like in a weird way, and let me ask you this, do you feel like you posted it in a weird way to make sure that you never went back to it? Like that was
Yes.
solidifying, like
Like
the
I'm
world
still
now
in
knows.
therapy. Yeah. So for that reason, and also because sometimes like your trauma, right?
Mhm.
We tend to like store it deep down inside. Sometimes not to relieve those moments, but just kind of to show you how far you've come, and to show myself like keep going, and also let other women know like keep going, because I'm also like I could have lost my life. One of those punches, I could have never been able to get up, continue my life, continue the things that I've been doing. I think it was also a way to show other women that it's not okay to stay in those situations, because there's a lot of women, because just this year alone, there has been over, I think, 20 domestic violence murders. The
My
women
goodness.
have been killed, not only them, but like their children.
This is absolutely insane. I mean,
Yeah,
that this is happening, and it's happening to people we know, you know what I mean?
right.
Like, I don't think anybody knew. How many people within your social circle saw that video and were absolutely surprised by it?
Everyone, everyone. It was very little people who like knew what I was going through. It was like a handful,
Yeah.
especially in my industry. Nobody knew, no one. But what really shocked me is me being in that situation and not being able to tell how other people were also going through that same situation, or are still in that situation, but they're just trying to figure out how to leave. Because you know what
Yes.
happens, Chris? There's a lot of guilt that you go through. There's a lot of shame that you go through, because the
That's number
first
1.
question, yeah, the first question to ask you, and for the people that are listening, this is just to educate you. When you hear stories like this, it's very hurtful when you ask, well, why did you stay? Well, why didn't you leave? It's hurtful because a lot of times it's very hard, right? This is like a damage that has been done over time, and it almost like cripples you. It almost like you shut down. Like I'm still dealing with a lot of like PTSD, anxiety, where like my body, I don't do well when there's like, when people are like screaming or yelling or like stuff like that. My body just tense. So it's really hard for women or men to just up and leave. You have to create a plan, one, for your safety, because that person is going to find you. you
Mhm.
know that's how extreme it is. So when you ask those questions, you're bringing that shame back into the victim. you know so maybe just ask how you can help, or maybe just, I'm sorry that that happened to you. But those questions, they're very hurtful.
It's an interesting thing you say that, because I do think that that's a common place where your brain goes, but I think people have to realize that, there is a thing that's called victim shaming, and that's a form of it when you're because what you're basically saying when you ask the question, "Why did you stay?"
Hmm.
It's almost as if you're saying, "This is your fault, and, you
Yes.
could have prevented it." And I think that's a very un unreal expectation to have on an individual that's been through domestic violence. And
Right.
so, my goodness, I will tell you that I am just so proud of you, and I feel like there's a lot of people who need to hear this. How have you turned, it sounds like you're now doing advocacy work around this, where you're doing workshops and that sort of thing. Um, how do you feel about, how are you helping people today around domestic violence?
So every year we do our event where we raise money for domestic violence victims. So like last year we raised about, I believe it was like $25,000.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and we also do a bride's march. So in the 90s, there was this bride who was actually murdered on her wedding in the Bronx. And the
Um,
Bronx is actually the number one place for domestic violence in New York, with the highest rates of domestic violence, where they're deadly.
why do
Women
you think that
don't
is?
even make it. I think it's a cycle. I think that there's not enough advocacy. I think that there's not enough resources, especially when you're a mom. Where am I going to go? Am I going to go to a shelter? Some people might not have family. I was lucky enough that I could go to my mom's house, right? But some people might not have that, so they have to stay within those relationships. With our Hispanic community, I was actually lucky enough to have met this attorney who actually helped me get my residency because of what I went through.
Wow.
Um, and a lot of women who are undocumented have to stay in those relationships because of the financial situation. you know so like I said, there's just not enough advocacy, there's not enough resources. And I feel like if I continue to speak about it, people will understand that there is help. It's not going to be easy because it's not easy. And I get a lot of DMs. How do I leave? Can you help me? And my go-to is always have a plan. Don't just, obviously if it gets too bad, call the police, call somebody, tell someone, but have a plan in place,
Mm-hmm.
because you're dealing with narcissists. And at the end of the day, there is a very dangerous person that you're dealing with. So every year, like I said, so with the Bryce March, Gladys was her name. Her abuser actually ended up murdering her on her wedding day, on her wedding dress. So everybody dresses on their wedding dress, and we'd march for like 100 blocks in the Bronx, from the Bronx to Manhattan. And it's beautiful because so many women down the street that see all these women in their wedding gowns, and everybody's like, yeah, do it, like, I'm so proud of you guys. And it's so emotional, so we do that. I also work with Angels of Long Island, which is a nonprofit here in Long Island, and they do a lot of housing, clothing, whatever it is that they need, they'll provide for.
Wow. I'm just like, this is so good. I mean, this is, and then you have this layer of, having to figure out how to remain a citizen and how to remain, in the States while this is all going on, which is a layer that not everybody has to deal with. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Like, so you came here, you said at what age?
I was 10.
So you're 2 years within 2 years distance of your son at that point, right? And
Yeah.
can you imagine
Oh
your
my
son
God.
living
I
through
ask
that? Because I
myself
mean,
that
when
all
you
the
look at your kids, what's that?
I ask myself that all the time. My mom was brave. I couldn't.
So how did you tell me the story? Do you remember it vividly, like getting
Oh
here and
yeah,
how that all went down?
100%. Yeah.
So how
So
did it happen?
so my mom came to the States when I was 5. She just up and
Okay.
left. Um because my dad was also abusive to her, and she knew in order for her to survive, she had to take that leap of faith.
Well, hold on
Um
real quick. I'm gonna jump in. You're you're at about 8 to 10 years old at this time
I'm
when
5.
she
I
oh,
was
you're
5
5
when
when
my
she
mom
is.
left.
So you're living in a domestic violence situation
Right.
as a
So
kid.
see, but I don't remember it. I'm only speaking
Okay.
because my mom
Yeah.
was able to share these stories later on. Like I love my dad.
Mhm.
So it's very difficult for me to like pick
Gotcha.
sides and say that,
Respect.
but I was so little, and I think that a lot of times when we're that young, we tend to kind of like forget our trauma.
Exactly. Well said. Yes.
Yeah. So, but I know that that's her story, and I have to validate her emotions and her story. Um,
Understood. Okay. And I don't want to touch on something that, is not fair to anybody else, especially as you have a relationship there. But so you get through that piece of it. Your mom comes, and then how do you end up getting back together with your mom?
Yeah, so my mom was like, I was 10, my brother was 7 at the time. And my mom was just like, I need my kids here. They're getting older. Nobody wants to take care of them. We were just going from house to house. She was like, I just need to
You
get
went
my kids
5 years
here.
without your mom?
Yeah, 5 years.
Wow. I mean,
It's a
those are critical years. I can't imagine like my kids
100%.
being without mom during
I
that
couldn't
period.
imagine my son without his mom. Like he
Oh.
would be like a hot mess. So, but I think that it also builds character, resilience.
Yes.
So my mom decided I'm gonna pay for a coyote and I'm gonna get my kids here. And no one told us anything. I think that one day my aunt came and she said, "Get your things. You're going to see your mom." I'm 10. I'm like, I'm going to go see my mom. She coming by bus, because I used to speak to her and she's in the United States, and all we could picture was like the Twin Towers, the Statue of the Liberty, all these great places. So we're like excited, but we're just excited to see our mom. But we
Mhm.
didn't know the journey ahead of us. So we ended up meeting with a coyote, and my aunt was like, "All right, this is the person who's going to bring you to the United States to see your mom." It took us about 2 months. 2 months. So we had to go to like Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico, taking a
Are you
couple of
walking this entire time? You're walking.
we're taking buses, so
Buses,
we
okay.
have a couple of buses. Then we get to Mexico, and in Mexico is when you have to start doing a lot of walking through the desert.
Yes.
So through
Do you
the
remember
desert,
what month it was?
It was April.
April. So it's still hot.
It's still hot, yeah. So, and I think that one of the memories that strikes the most to me is when we literally had to cross the Rio Grande. A lot of people don't know this, but we had just learned how to swim, my brother and I. So we're just like, this is the middle of the night. They're like, all right, you're gonna hop in this black, what are those called? Little black
Inner
donuts.
tube, like an inner tube for a tire.
Yeah, and then they're
Yes.
like they're gonna pull you, and we're
Okay.
just like I'm like, "I don't wanna leave my brother, oh my god,"
Oh,
because I was like, I'm
how
like
old
my
is your brother, older or younger?
younger, so he was
Okay.
6, he was
Yes,
7.
okay.
He was 7, I was 10. So I'm like, "Oh my god," like, "No, my brother," like, I was like, "Alright, let my brother go first, and then I'll go, this way I know that he's there safe, and then I'll go," you
Mhm.
know? So then he went, then I went, and that had to be, like, the scariest thing.
Is
Um
your aunt with you, or is it just you 2 with the coyote and a
Yeah,
group of
so
other
it's
people?
my aunt and her 2 kids, but
Okay,
it's
good.
just
So you
me and
got
my
family. You're
brother.
not you're not
Yeah.
literally okay, good. I mean, as bad as this is, that's like the one shining light
Well,
on
we
this.
had my
Yes,
aunt.
okay.
Yeah.
So you get over the Rio Grande. Now you're in Texas, right? Now you get to
Now we're in
Texas.
Texas. We're in Texas, and I can talk about this now because I have my green card.
Yes.
But the coyote, he goes, "Listen, when you get to Texas, you have to, like, just cry." It's just like, as soon as you see a gringo, just cry. And that was my first interaction with a gringo. So I think we're there. We're in Texas. We were in Matamoros first. We get to Texas and we cry. And I could tell you, till this day, I do not like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches
As you ate them all the way there.
because that was the first meal they gave us there. But like,
Oh.
I'm just like scared because they take you to a detention center. It's like you're in jail. So that was like the first sandwich they gave us. And for some reason, I guess maybe because I was nervous, I didn't know what was going on. I could not eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I was like, no,
Wait,
don't do it.
you confuse me on this a little bit, and this is just
Yeah.
because of my education around this, but, so the areas you're talking about, I know very well because 'cause I'm from Texas, and
Hmm.
I used to cross over Matamoros back and forth from Brownsville all the time, right, McAllen area. But so you get over, and why do you need to cry to see when you see a gringo? Is that because
Because you're a child, because they were saying because you're a kid, they just, a lot of times they could turn you away,
yes, there's a
you
protection
know?
order that happens at the moment you hit the soil.
Right.
Okay.
So I guess he was just saying, I guess to like spark something in them. Like you just
Yes.
never know.
No, that's
And I
good.
guess,
That's good advice, actually. It's
yeah.
really and it's
So
it's a weird compassion that your
yeah,
coyote had because a lot of coyotes just take the money and don't there was a weird compassion that was there with that guy
I
the
was there.
coyote.
Listen, we were definitely blessed because we definitely
Yes,
hear stories where it could have turned so much worse.
of course. Yeah, so
Um,
many ways.
right. So we're blessed to be here, but it's definitely a story to tell that it just adds to our journey here in the States.
So when you get to Texas and you get to the detention center, how do you get reunited with your mother?
So it's the process. So it took about I want to say a month, right?
You
She
were
has to
living in a
prove,
detention center?
yeah. So my mom had to prove that she was really our mom, especially because we were coming without her.
Yes.
So like they let my aunt leave with her kids because those are her kids, but someone has to prove that they're our parents. They're like our family.
What a process.
They couldn't do my aunt because she could just say anyone could say, and again, this is a big thing also when it comes to like sex trafficking, right? I don't want to get to
Yeah,
that thing,
yeah.
but that's why they have to make sure that who you say is your parent is your real parent.
This is a
So my mom,
huge problem right now. This is like a
oh,
crazy problem that's
100%.
happening as we speak,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Who was
definitely
the
a huge.
president at the time? What year is this?
This was 2001. It was actually right before the Twin Towers in April.
Gotcha. Okay.
So president at that time was
Bush. It was Bush.
George Bush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you get to you then you your mom is your mom already in the New York area at this time?
So my mom is in New York, so now she has to take a bus because she was also
Yes.
undocumented. She can't fly. She had to take a bus from Texas. I mean, from New York to Texas. So in the meantime, my brother and I were just like at a detention center. Um, and we're just there. We don't know any English. We don't know anyone. And at one point we get separated. So he goes with like the guys, I'm with the girls. And like that was like super scary because we've always been together.
Yes.
And then my mom comes and we get, reunited, and it was like it was crazy. I thought it
I
was
mean,
dreaming.
this is a remarkable story. I mean, you have been through so much, Katherin. I mean, and to
Yeah.
think, like, so you get to your mom, you're now reunited. Do you remember that moment when you saw your mom in a detention
Oh,
center?
100%.
What was
Yeah.
it? What did it feel like?
I just had like butterflies in my stomach. I just felt like I was like at home. I just
Yes.
felt like my mom, after like 2 months of like trying to get there, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing if I was ever going to see anyone in my family. Seeing my mom was just like, it was such a huge relief. But it was also like a culture shock for sure,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh,
It took
absolutely.
time to get used to.
So, what was your mom doing? Like, when once you got situated, what kind of work was she doing?
So my mom was working at McDonald's. My mom is such a hard worker. I think that that's
Mm.
why I work so hard, because like I take it from her. So she was working at like a McDonald's. She was working at a Wendy's. She also cleaned houses. She at one point she had like 3 jobs. I don't know how she did it, because she would like still cook, make sure the house was clean, and still had 3 jobs. She managed to save because it was like $10,000 per kid.
Yeah.
So she managed to save that money and then send for us. And then after that, we came to Queens.
And you've
Both,
been there ever since. Are you well, you started Queens, then you ended up in Long Island.
and
Or
then we
wrote
ended up on Island.
Yeah, crazy. What a
Yeah,
crazy story, and to see your success is just, amazing to me. So, when did you realize that you had, did you obviously started working early, right? Did you start working, when you were 15, 16, or even younger?
yeah. So I started working at no, actually a Colombian bakery was my first
Okay.
job. I love Colombians. I say it
Yes.
all the time. I think in my past life I was Colombian. Swear to
Okay.
God. I know you're Colombian, right, Chris?
No, I'm not Colombian.
Oh, you're not.
Yeah, my family's, Mexican.
Oh, it's Mexican. You know
It's
what? I
just
feel
that
like I
I
said
have the Medellin
the
name, so
same
it makes
thing.
sense
Is
that
that what
because
it is?
it's a city in Colombia, so there's a Medellin, and then there's a Medellin cartel, which I have nothing to do with,
Yeah.
but
Oh, you
so,
have nothing to, you sure?
yeah, I wish I wouldn't be doing podcasts.
You wouldn't be doing a podcast.
Yeah, we would do a podcast right now. So,
That's funny.
but no, this is just so cool. So you start working early, and you're working in a Colombian bakery, and then, because I have this theory that people who are successful started working really early in life, and
Yeah,
it was like things you learn. Like, I learned process flow, doing pizzas as a kid, right? Like, there was always a process flow when I worked, but I started when I was like 15, 16. And so now, like, you have this amazing brand. You are known. You're the number one Latina on social media. You're the most followed realtor in the market you're in. How does that feel? Like, I mean, to when you think back to where you came from and those moments in a detention center where it was probably the most loneliest place in the world, to hear where you're at now, do how do you, what do you think it was that got you to this? Like, where does that resilience come from?
I think it's from like knowing that, I come from nothing. It was never, my family's never been like the most financially like, you know, stable, or we weren't really taught financial literacy. But we were always hard workers, dedicated, honest. Um, my mom, she's always been such a hard worker. But I think since I was little, there's something I think, and that's what I say when people say you either have it or you don't. That you have to have that like hunger inside of you, that nothing is going to stop you. They're
Yeah.
like no matter what, and that's with me. Even when, and not to sound, too overly positive, but when bad things happen, I always feel like sometimes it's for a reason, a purpose.
Write it
Like
down.
how
Yeah.
do you turn that around? Like I've never been one to dwell on something wrong, something going wrong. It's just like, what is this trying to tell me? That's how I look at life.
Yeah, I
Since
think
I
somebody said, it was a really good quote I saw, and it was like, when something bad's happening, I'm not asking God why it's happening to me. I'm looking for what I can learn from the situation, and I think
Right.
that that's a really good way because, and then somebody else was telling, or I may have seen this somewhere, but somebody was saying, when you're in the fight, when you're, when you're down, you got to document that time in your life because it's those feelings that you forget,
Yeah.
and like you had very specific feelings as you were coming out of the bad relationship, and when you were sitting in that detention center, there were probably feelings that you can't relate to today, but if they ever came back, you can recognize them really fast and realize, how to exit and how to, change, turn it around. And so,
Maneuver.
for
Yeah.
you've been in these just remarkable situations in life, and to see you do so well is really telling of the individual that you are. Tell me about your brand. So, when you look at your brand, because I think that all these things and who you are have really created an individual that I look at today who is successful, who people want to emulate. I was looking at you from afar at the event that we were at, and I noticed that you kind of had like an entourage with you. You had a group of people, and I noticed there was something that happened with you and a female that was there. She's a good friend of yours, and I've seen her on some of your social. But you were on stage, and she did this thing to you, like, she did a moan. It was, like, almost like you 2 were talking, but not talking, and it was like, you knew what she said, and she said it, but it was this, like, telepathic thing, but you have these people around you that are this amazing support systems for
Yeah.
you as well, so I think, is that a big piece of who you've become, is making sure that you choose wisely who you keep in your circle?
Oh, 100%. I think that's like one of my biggest things. I don't like to be around negative people, and my friendships they're very small,
Mhm.
but they're very meaningful. And everyone around me wants the best for me, and the same for them. I'll do anything for my friends, and it's like a family. So that's my best friend Stephanie. We've actually went to high school together, got her into
Yeah.
real estate, and
Oh,
she's
she
just
has your back. She will walk through fire for you, and I've never
yeah.
met her. I've been there,
Oh,
and I don't even
100%.
think we met, but she has your back.
Yeah, and we both like, the same thing with her, but you're right. She looked at me and she was just like, "Turn up your fire, own who you are,"
Yes.
you know?
Yes, it was like that one moment. It was right before we started,
Yeah.
and she was like, and she was serious. She was like, "You're gonna do this,
She
this." I
meant
don't know what she
business.
said,
She was
but
like
I was like, where's my Stephanie in life? I'm not rolling around with Stephanie. This was so good. So, okay, brand, tell me about that. Like, you have a definitive brand. How has that been for you, and how has it changed, your business, building that brand and who you are as an influencer?
I mean, it's elevated my business. I'm honestly so blessed. I'm very grateful. It's blessed me not only in real estate, but just like you said, like as a brand and like overall, right? So Katherin Real Estate is not just real estate. It's really like a multi-service type of brand. I'm here to inspire, I'm here to service, I'm here to help you in any way that I can. But I think that when I was getting into social media, everybody was just pushing like this niche, just get a niche, just get a niche. And it kind of, I was kind of like, who am I? Like, who's Cat? Like, what is it that I like? I don't really have hobbies because I don't have time.
Yep.
I'm like raising a son, and I'm trying to like build a business. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna say I'm going on hikes and I'm reading books, because I'm not. I listen to books, but one thing that I like to do is I like to help and I like to
Mhm.
inspire. So that's why, like on my social media, you're never really gonna see a lot of like what we do in our industry, which is a little toxic, if I'm being honest. Like, the bragging, I sold this or I'm doing this. Like, it's very
Yeah,
rare
you don't do
you'll
that.
see
I
your
noticed that you
social
don't do that.
media.
Yeah.
It's like very rare because I want to connect with people in like a different level. I want to connect in like a personal level. I want to connect whether it is that we're moms, whether it is because we're both hustlers, whether it is because we have the same interest in some way. I don't want to feel like people like I'm competing with anyone or someone's competing with me. Like, I want to elevate, I want to inspire. That's
And
that's
that's
what I
true, because here's the
looking
rest of realtors in your market, and
Yeah.
they're doing all the same shit. And then you got
Yeah.
Katherin over
Yeah.
here
It's just like,
who's doing her thing, right? And like it's almost better. It's better that way. Like, what do your DMs look like? I mean, I'm sure you gotta get through a bunch of BS in your DMs, but how are you getting deals through your DMs at this point?
yeah. So I've never paid for lead generation like ever.
Mhm.
I've actually gotten some pretty big brand deals too. That you don't even see that on my Instagram, but recently I actually got paid, um, which is super humbling. And like I said, I'm super grateful to God. But I just because I want to show people the power of social media and why you
Yeah,
should keep
of
going, it shouldn't be about, I think it also depends on what you want to do. Like if you want to be a transactional real estate agent, then there's different ways to go about it. But like I knew that I wanted to be more than a realtor, right? But I actually got a deal for $12,000 just for 5 stories on my Instagram.
There you go.
That's how
And don't be
powerful
ashamed of that.
it is.
You are a little uncomfortable talking about that, but don't be
Yeah,
ashamed of it because you built up to this and
yeah.
you deserve every bit of the success that you're getting.
Yeah. So, and I think that these
Legit.
brands, they see that, right? They want someone there because it's like you could have the following, right? You could have
Yeah.
the largest following, but if you don't have a community, you really don't have anything. And I can say one thing about my followers is they do not play about me. I think I did one because listen, I also have a feisty side. I think I posted one video when someone was being disrespectful when it came down to like domestic violence and like why I was doing it, and I posted something, and they were just like not having it. They were like, "Don't," because I'm very problematic. Like you're never gonna see drama on my thing. Like it's very always uplifting and positive. But I'm very proud of that. I'm proud that I built a community within Instagram. And it
This is
wasn't
amazing.
easy.
So you have this you've created a following that's almost protective of you in
Yeah,
a way because they understand what you've been through, and it's that's just really cool. So in terms of business and getting deals and that sort of thing, do you feel like most of your deals now are coming directly from your stories and from Instagram, or
yeah, all of
is
my
it a
deals.
50-50?
No, all of my deals come through Instagram.
All of
Like
your deals are
all
coming
of
from
my
IG at this point.
all of them. Yeah,
So when somebody says social media is not for me,
yeah.
you're a testament to say that this has changed your life. You're
Oh,
getting deals.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
This is amazing.
It's completely changed my life. It's crazy. And that's why, don't I feel like people shouldn't feel guilty, but you don't have to disclose everything in your life. I think that you let people in certain areas of your life. They don't have to know everything, but definitely put yourself out there. Like, you don't see Coca-Cola being ashamed of the commercials that they're feeding you when you're watching TV,
Yeah.
right? You don't see McDonald's caring about how many advertisements you're seeing, whether it is on Instagram, TikTok, or on TV. They're going to advertise their brand.
There
So
you go. Yeah.
why should you feel ashamed or putting your brand, you are your brand, out there,
Agreed. 100%.
you know?
I totally agree. And you know what I love about what you're doing is that you're proud to rock that you're Latina.
Oh, yeah.
Like you hold that very close to your heart. And I think that a lot of people, as you're growing up, because we're brought up in at times where we're not we're not predominantly in situations of color, that people don't own it. And I think that you own it so well. And I think that you're just doing a service to other younger Latinas who are coming up to say, I wanna own who I am and be proud of it.
Yeah. No, and not only that, but I want to show our Latinas, our young Latinas, coming, and this is just a consejo as a Latina mom, right? That is very easy to take the easy route and do all these other things. But I think that because I'm also very traditional, I
Yeah.
think it's also as important to show our young girls and our women that there is other ways, right? And it could be very easy, very simple with social media to do things and get that financial freedom without disrespecting yourself, you know?
Without a without a doubt. That's the number one thing. And,
Yeah.
as we come to an end on this, I am curious, because we did meet at NAREP, so I wanna give a shout out to NAREP because this would not have happened had we
No,
not
it
been
would
on.
not.
So, are you going to Miami? So I think I'm telling you it's happening in Miami. I don't know what's going on in the background, but it's happening in Miami, but you're
Yeah.
going, and, I hope we get to hang out, and I hope I get to see you there, but, before we end, I wanna ask you a question real quick. What are your 3 jams that you're listening to right now? Like, what are the 3 songs that you cannot stop listening to at this moment?
Well, I'm a big fan of Tina Turner, and she just passed
Oh,
away.
yes,
So
yes.
right now I'm listening to What's Love Got to Do with It.
Love that jam. I love that
It's
jam.
number one right now.
Yes.
And then listening to oh, this is gonna sound so silly because
Oh,
like
I wanna hear it.
I'm not a teenager, but I'm listening to Area Code just because it's all over TikTok.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna check it out. I haven't heard that
That's
one
the
yet,
one
but
who's like, I got a white boy in my roster. He's stealing
yes, I know.
my
I know. Yeah, see, I wouldn't have known that. I just know it's a TikTok song.
I'm listening to that, and I'm listening to some Bad Bunny, of course.
Oh, of
Anything
course,
that is
of
Bad
course.
Bunny.
Man, I am like, this is like you brought so much, inspiration today to me and to people who are listening. And we're doing this right before a 3-day weekend. So I hope that you get to go and be an amazing mom because I watch your stories and you're such a good mom. And,
Thank
he's so
you.
lucky to have you. And I hope that he always remembers, the courage that you've been through it as a woman, as a Latina, and as his mother to find inspiration to continue to move forward. And I hope everybody else gets to see the same. So I can't wait to see you in Miami. And thank you for
No,
doing
thank
this
you.
with us
I
today.
cannot wait. I think we're gonna have such a good time in Miami, and
Yes,
we're gonna create a lot of fun content. So I look forward to that.
we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah,
I'm taking Fabio with me, and we're gonna have some fun out there. So I
we're
can't
gonna
wait to
take
see
our
you.
girls.
You're gonna, yeah, and tell Stephanie I'll see her, and her and I
Yes,
need to be friends too.
yeah, she's gonna be excited. That's the gluten-free mommy.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. I love it. All right. Well, we'll talk soon. Katherin, thank you so much for joining the Breakthrough Podcast. And thank you. I can't wait to post this and to hear the feedback we get on it.
Yay! Thank you, Chris.
Yes. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.